Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and you are watching the G.I. Joe Comics podcast, or listening to it, if it's on audio only. But for this one, I think the visuals are very much part of the experience. So if you're on audio only, maybe switch on over to the YouTube channel, where we are discussing today secrets from the G.I. Joe Comics archives with the Lost Kung Fu Grip story, a ghost story, the webcomic, which we can exclusively reveal here. And I will not be talking about this comic alone. As always, I'll be joined by my co-host. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
I was actually hiding in an urn underneath my desk, and I wasn't. Anyway, I don't have this joke fully fleshed out. But instead of my normal hiding under the desk from week to week between episodes, folks, you'll get it in a minute.
Yeah, maybe you were looking for a lost comic, but you don't have to look under your desk for it, Tim, because it's here. So it is the Kung Fu Grip story, a lost story. We thought a ghost story. It is called.
Okay, wait. So you just explained this to me, and I am delighted and a little gobsmacked. So set the stage for us, Mark. In what year were there 2 packs of G.I. Joe action figures with Hasbro, from Hasbro, which had new Larry Hama stories, and this was gonna be one of them, and then it didn't happen? And how did you find it?
So we've got a bit of a crossover of stories here. So in around about this same time, 2007-ish, Hasbro releasing these 3 3/4 inch figures or 4-inch figures in a packet of 2 with a accompanying comic book, and a few of those sort of had, as that sort of wound down, some of the toy packs got cancelled, and the comics sort of found their way out in slightly esoteric ways, with the exception of one which was never released, a comic called Cold Comfort, which has partly been revealed via Hawk Sanders' post on Facebook recently. And we'll be talking about that in the future when we get a spare moment. But this is slightly different to that. This was another comic that was never released around the same time. Okay. So in April 2007, Hasbro posted on their monkeybarTV minisite some exclusive web-only mini-comics. And one of those was this Kung Fu Grip branded webcomic called A Ghost Story. This gave a preview of the new Kung Fu Grip line of Sigma 6 8-inch toys, and the designs of some of those figures that would be featured in this particular issue: Dark Ninja Master, Samurai Snake Eyes, Crime Boss Destro. And the story was believed to be lost to time because it was only ever published on this mini site in Flash. And on websites up to date, some people have saved down the little, image of the cover and a blurb about what the comic was about, but nobody seems to have saved it anywhere. But some web sleuthing by me, looking back through the web archives, I was able to track down a version of this comic in a Flash player that still somehow worked, despite most of the other places containing similar comics not. This one seems to have survived, and I was able to take some screenshots of it, and that is what we've got here, Tim.
Okay, that's great, and I have questions. And then we should just do a quick recap for listeners, viewers of Sigma 6. Okay, you said Monkey Bar, and then you said mini websites. I don't know that I know what Monkey Bar is, and if it was just a Hasbro thing, I don't think I was aware of it. So, do you have any more information on that?
I think this was a sort of like a mini site on the Hasbro.com website called monkeybarTV, where they had lots of these kind of mini flash-based bits of the website that are prone to breaking and not being supported past a certain point in time, because it's all reliant on this flash player technology rather than just simple images. Yeah.
All right. And then for our listeners, viewers who keep hearing us say this word flash, a quick reminder. Macromedia made programs in the late 90s and early 2000s. One of the programs was called Flash. Flash was originally designed for creating graphics and animation for the web. And because the assets were not bitmap based, they were, oh shoot, I'm totally blanking. Vector. If it's not a bitmap, it's a vector file. That's what I couldn't remember. Anyway, files in Flash were really small. And that was important because in the early 2000s, internet connections were really slow, right? Like, you know, your home might have dial-up, and maybe your office had like a D1 connection. But websites could not be heavy. They couldn't have a lot of assets. They couldn't have a lot of moving bells and whistles. They couldn't have a lot of like very, very detailed large files that did anything. Otherwise, the site wouldn't load or the site would crash. And Flash, a couple years later, was bought by Adobe, or maybe Macromedia was bought by Adobe. And then the program was renamed even later, Animate, Adobe Animate. So if you have fiddled around drawing or animating or building websites in Adobe Animate, that goes back to this earlier version of this program, Flash. And back then, when people said Flash, they meant two things. They meant Flash, the program where you would make these digital assets, or they meant Flash Player, which was the way that you ran any of these moving files on a website. And those two things are not the same thing, but because the word sort of got mixed up, there was sort of a shorthand, right? And sometimes people would say like, oh, this website's really flashy, right? It's got a lot of Flash elements, or I need to use my Flash, I need to like update my Flash plugin, right? So I can watch or experience this website. Okay, so that's a very non-technical, technical bit of context. Mark, you and I did a whole episode about the Devil's Due Sigma 6 comics, and we touched on the Devil's Sigma 6 animated series and the Sigma 6 toy line. Can you just quickly remind listeners and viewers sort of what and where Sigma 6 was?
So Sigma 6 were these somewhat chunky 8-inch figures that were, in a different scale, different aesthetic, different continuity to what we'd kind of, well, continuity starts getting complicated, but to kind of the typical G.I. Joe that we recognize from, the ARA comics or the previous animated series, and particularly the 3 3/4 inch or the 4-inch modern figures. These were big, chunky figures looking a lot like the what's that film called? Was it Toy Soldiers, with those little
small soldiers,
small soldiers that sort of come to light? That's kind of what it reminds me of when I see these guys. And they sort of took some quite bold decisions with the aesthetics as well. That it wasn't just a pure like for like recreation of what we've seen before. So, for example, what I've got on the screen at the moment is the Flint figure, who doesn't have any of those telltale sort of Flint, visual signs that lets us know that he's Flint. And it's leaning into very much sort of a lot of the anime aesthetics. And this guy's got like these two big bits of hair coming down his face, sort of very much a sort of an anime style. And so this comic, was promoting this line of figures and a set of toys being, released.
Can I say two more things?
2007. Yeah.
Okay, 2007. Sigma 6, the toy line, was not a big hit. It lasted for 2 or 3 years. The animated series was on Fox Saturday mornings. It lasted for 1 season here, and there was a second season that ran in Canada. And in addition to this chunky 8-inch toy line that Mark has mentioned and we're seeing a picture of right now, there was also a second toy line that was 2 inches or 2.5 inches of figures that didn't move so that there could be vehicles. And to make things even more exciting and perhaps confusing, Sigma 6 was a mix of a Real American Hero characters like Snake Eyes, Spirit, Storm Shadow, Cobra Commander. And then in its second year, it started using some 1970s Hasbro G.I. Joe adventure team imagery and sort of accessorizing. And Kung Fu Grip in the 1970s for G.I. Joe was a different hand sculpt, right? The figures weren't suddenly martial artists, but the sort of suggested play was that, now your figures could grab onto things as if they knew Kung Fu. And I know that sentence doesn't fully make sense, but that was the hook. Because in the 70s in America, there was a big Kung Fu craze, right? Movies and TV shows. And so Sigma 6, in its second year, was mixing Real American Hero, new G.I. Joe, and different takes on 70s G.I. Joe in this new scale, 8 inches. And it's a very cool toy line, and the accessorizing was amazing, right? The weapons and the costumes, and there was, in addition to the hard plastic figures and accessories, there were also soft goods like capes and tunics. It was a very cool toy line that did not sell. All right, so that's my end of all this context. Was there anything else before we get to this comic, Mark, that you wanted to?
The image on the screen at the moment is from another one of these flash mini sites on the Hasbro site that I accessed from the Internet Archive. And this was a Kung Fu Grip mini site promoting the Kung Fu Grip returning. And I think the premise was that you could use the Kung Fu Grip to grip certain objects and maybe see what happens.
So like
the internet was a weird place back in the early 2000s.
Okay, so for those of you listening, the image right now is the 1970s package painting of a fist with the words Kung Fu Grip, and it's holding onto a metal bar, and there's a yellow burst behind it. And then on either side of this sort of old retro graphic are like modern photos of like some eggs and a light bulb and a stack of pancakes. And I guess if you used your mouse to click on these, the PNG file or the GIF, I don't think these may not have been JPEGs. I think these might have been PNG files because you can do a transparency there around an object, would be replaced by, I'm guessing, a second graphic where the eggs had been smashed, the light bulb had been smashed, the pancakes had been, I guess, smashed. And so you sort of have this, we think, 2-frame animation when you click on one of these items. And again, on the top left is the 70s G.I. Joe Adventure Team logo with the 70s Kung Fu Grip icon. And it's fun and I think perhaps confusing to be mixing this decades old symbology with the very modern take on Sigma 6 in 2007, particularly since the Saturday morning Sigma 6 cartoon was anime. It was actually an anime series that looked like anime and felt like anime. Okay.
Let's get into the comic, shall we?
Yeah.
So here's the cover. It's quite striking. And from the credits, we know that the cover pencils were by Ryan Odagawa and cover colors by Sundar Raj. Tim, what do you reckon to this digital-only cover?
Okay, so Ryan Odagawa, that name jumps out at me. Ryan Odagawa was working for Wildstorm between 95 and 97, and he has done many, many things since then. He's worked in comics that you have seen. He's worked in comics that you may not have seen, like for MLB and the NFL. He's storyboarded and done designs for animation. But the thing for comics, for me, that most jumps out is he spent 5 years contributing to Wildstorm Productions, which was Jim Lee's part of the Image universe before he sold it to DC. So Ryan Otagawa drew a Wildcats spinoff. He was an assistant on Gen 13. He did some Wetworks backup stories. He did a bunch of trading cards, and Wildstorm was doing a lot of trading cards in the mid and late 90s. And as far as I know, this is the only G.I. Joe work. And going back to the credits page, Mark, cover colorist of A Ghost Story, Sundaraj. You reminded me just before we started recording, this person has a connection to G.I. Joe. What's that?
That is that he was the colorist for the relaunched America's Elite book when he was coloring over Stefano Caselli initially for the first couple of issues, and he had that quite sort of painterly coloring style when he was doing that, a lot of detail. Whereas
here on the cover to A Ghost Story, the colors are hard edge, hard cut, sort of cell shading on the characters with a little bit of rendering in the background.
Mm-hmm. So getting onto the credits of this particular story, the script is by Andrew Dabb, who is a sort of almost an old hand at G.I. Joe by this stage, because he did the Sigma 6 tie-in comic, as well as some special missions stories as well for Devil's Due Productions. Art by Joe Abraham, who didn't have a huge amount of credits, but significantly did do this story, G.I. Joe Real American Hero, The Peril of the Raging Inferno, also known as the Fire Safety Special that Devil's Due released, also written by Andrew Dabb. So colours by Robbie Ruffalo, who coincidentally also coloured the Fire Safety book.
I think Rob Ruffalo had coloured previously for Devil's Due and colored, I think, for Dreamwave. I think colored some Transformers for Dreamwave.
Letters by Brian J. Crowley, who has done some of the Devil's Due lettering. Graphic design, Sean K. Dove. So he's another one of the Devil's Due stable. Edited by Brian Tawney. Cover pencils by Ryan Odagawa, as we said, and cover colours by Sundar Raj. Interestingly, here it says stories and direction by Neil Hoffman and Aaron Archer. So both two folks from Hasbro, sort of giving us to understand here that this is a kind of a top-down promotion with the ideas coming from Hasbro Directs. These are the figures we want you to include. This is our, rough story that we'd like you to tell. Go away and execute it,
and cram it all into 7 pages, or
exactly.
6 pages, or 8 pages. Okay, so for those of you who are listening, what we've been looking at, if not the cover, is the inside front cover. And it's got the G.I. Joe logo, and it says A Ghost Story. It's got the credits, and then it's got a bunch of introductory text, which I think Mark or I are about to read. And then on the bottom, it has indicia. And technically, the title of this comic as a sort of published legal entity, right? Because you look in the indicia, and that's actually what the real title is, whatever the cover says. Here, it's G.I. Joe Kung Fu Grip, Volume 1, Issue 1. So even though this was a Sigma 6 tie-in, right, we'll note that it doesn't say Sigma 6 anywhere on the cover or on this credits page. And in terms of a published object, the title is Kung Fu Grip.
Yep. And the branding here is G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero as well, which is
right. And Sigma 6 was not G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. It was G.I. Joe Sigma 6. And I have been told, though I have not double checked, that in some other countries, Sigma 6 was called Sigma 6 by itself without G.I. Joe, or with G.I. Joe very much sort of secondary. And this was when Hasbro was starting to, I think, reckon with the fact that the name G.I. Joe is so identified with America, and it's an Americanism. An American is a Joe, an American soldier is a Joe, and there's even a red, white, and blue stripe in the logo type. And then there's the word American in Real American Hero. Mark, are you going to read the opening text?
Let's do this. This preamble opening text. I'll put on an effect. Let me know if you think this is too distracting.
It's not too distracting.
Long ago, there lived among the Arishikage clan a man with a black heart and a serpent's tongue. As punishment for his crimes, the Dark Master was exiled to a cave. There he discovered Moon's Blood, a mystical stone of great power, providing its possessor the ability to channel the energies of the dead. So, the Dark Master was reborn, bursting from the earth and wielding his diamantium dragon's claw sword, the Moon's Blood jewel embedded in its hilt. Many honorable men fell that day. But though he could not be defeated, the Dark Master could be contained. A wise elder took an enchanted urn from within the temple and, saying an ancient incantation, captured the Dark Master's spirit. But the Dark Master's story did not end there. The binding spell lasts but 100 years. Thus, once a century, every member of the Arishikage clan must return to the temple and take part in the ritual resealing of the urn. They must put aside their differences in order to stop the Dark Master from escaping and destroying them all.
That was great.
Thank you.
Okay. So now
a lot of heavy lifting, right?
Absolutely. My initial reaction is, I hope this comic book is 22 pages, because this backstory has a lot of nouns. Like, okay, there's the Arishikage clan, there's a man, there are his crimes, there's a cave, there's the Moon's Blood stone, there's the energies of the dead. So now he has a name. He's the Dark Master. He has this special sword, which has a gem in it, a jewel in it. There are men, they die, right? And I'm only halfway through. I worked with a teacher when I was teaching, who's a filmmaker. And I remember one day at the end of the semester, one of the students was describing their work to us. It was the big end of the semester critique, and they were describing the story, the film they wanted to make. And their description was really long. And this teacher, department chair, filmmaker said something like, notice how many times you've said "and" in your plot. And you're going to try and cram all this into, whatever it was, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And so I look at this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraph, and I actually don't see a lot of ands, but I do see a lot of sentences that chronologically come after them, right? So there's this guy, there's this cave, there's this moon blood, there's this sword, there are men, there's an urn, right? There are all these props, and there are all these characters, and there are all these locations, and there are all these movements or actions or verbs, right? So he's exiled, and then the energy possesses, and then he wields a sword, and then honorable men fall, and then a wise elder takes an urn, and it goes on and on and on. And it sort of feels like there are two stories here, and this wanted to be 2 full-length comics, the one that we just read and the one we're about to read. And I have a bad feeling, since Mark told me that this is a mini comic, which to me means 2 things. It's physically small. It's not as tall and wide as a standard comic book, but also it's much shorter. And I'm worried that this mini comic is going to be very short, and is not going to be able to tell much of a story, and is going to be greatly unbalanced with this very interesting but very expositional opening text.
Right. So there's a lot of objects, like you said. There's this moon's blood jewel, but there's a diamantium dragon's claw sword, which is definitely not adamantium, as you point out. It's diamantium. So here's the first page proper. We've got a guy with some old looking eyes. Maybe this is the Hard Master. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't. Ancestors, I beseech you, do not let this evil escape. All of the Arashikage stand united this day against the cursed Dark Master.
And then Destro says,
yeah, someone that doesn't look much like a Destro that we recognize, and that's because it's not just any old Destro. It's t-shirts with no sleeves, Crime Boss Destro, who was also a Sigma 6 figure with a removable mask.
Wow, what a totally cool and weird toy. So he's got a chrome head, right? But then his arms also seem to be that same sort of
like metal arms.
Silver.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not like actually chromed, but I think that's the idea here. This is a cool figure, and it's a cool Destro figure. It's a very weird Destro figure, and that's like Destro would be my third or fourth guess. Okay, Crime Boss Destro. Okay, so can you go? All right, so back on this first, I was teeing you up to do your very good Destro impression, but before I do, I just want to say in the first panel we got a close up of this old guy, and he seems to be looking at a tiny, tiny urn that's the size of a quarter.
Ooh.
And I think what's actually happening is the artist. Wait, can you go back? I'm already blanking because we spent so much time on the cover artist. So the Joe Abraham. Okay, Joe Abraham, artist Joe Abraham. I think what he's done is this panel is actually a montage where we see the urn kind of in front of this old guy, not literally physically, but it's sort of the thing that he's paying attention to, that he's thinking of. And it's actually a full-size urn that's like the size of your head and not the size of a quarter, even though that's sort of how it's drawn here. And then in the second panel,
like in old 80s, TV coverage, like on Top of the Pops or something, and they might have one figure and then they're sort of transposing together
a double
background
exposure
image. Yeah.
Like someone singing, and behind them is they're inside a studio, and behind them is the Eiffel Tower, and that's they've superimposed transparency of a photo. Okay, so in the second panel, we're in this courtyard in the Ninja Clan stronghold, and there are a bunch of white ninja all around, and it sort of looks like one kind of person is on the left and maybe one other kind of person is on the right. And then it's really hard to tell, but I think the old guy is in the center, up closest to the altar. And then the urn at its full size, maybe even bigger than a head, maybe like the size of a torso, is on top of a little dais or podium there. Okay, so Mark, what does Destro say?
Destro says, if this Dark Master is real, he may prove quite useful to Cobra.
And then someone who I was guessing is like scrap iron without a visor, or spirit iron knife, or some new Joe that I've never heard of, like Link, or like Hard Hat. I'm just making up names. And I asked Mark who this is. Whoever this is talking to Snake Eyes, and I put Snake Eyes in quotes because we're going to talk about this amazing Snake Eyes design in a minute. But there's this guy who's got some like long hair strands in front of his face. And Mark, who is this?
This is Flynn. We actually popped him up on the screen earlier. So he's the one with these weird hair strands, who's got literally nothing about him that would suggest it's the Flint that we recognize.
Right. The Flint cues are a beret, ammo belts over his shoulders, like suspenders, Maybe one of his costume cues, like a black shirt or camo pants. Okay. And he says, can you scroll up just a smidge? This is a nice ceremony and all, Snake Eyes, but I gotta say, I don't believe in ghosts.
And then Storm Shadow, in his funky-looking samurai costume, says, "Do I try and go full Kyeon-young? Or the master can't be controlled, Destro. The real treasure is his dragon's claw sword. Wielding the diamantium blade, which is definitely not adamantium, one man could stand against entire armies."
And then
You
Destro,
don't say.
right, Destro with his finger to his chin. And we now have not a close-up of Destro. He's still pretty small, but we're a little bit closer. And again, it's sort of unclear. Does Destro in the comic, I know we've seen the toy. In the comic, does Destro have a metal mask on his face? Does he therefore also have sort of metal on his arms? Because the color here for his arms and his face is the same. So it sort of just looks like Destro's not wearing a mask and he has a pale
Like
complexion.
like an off-white, yeah.
Okay, so you had mentioned that Storm Shadow has a samurai costume. And everyone, I want you to imagine Budo from the G.I. Joe line, but not the original Budo figure where his armor is not very, it doesn't have a lot of flourish because, the 80s G.I. Joe bodies, there weren't like a lot of secondary pieces. Think of the like post 2007 Budo, right? Where it's still that technical same costume design, but he's got all these amazing pieces on him and he really looks like a samurai. Okay, so now imagine that all in white and then add like 5% Star Wars. And you've got this cool, nuts samurai Storm Shadow. And that's what the toy is actually called, right? So we're looking at a Sigma 6 toy. The words Sigma 6, Mark has put an image of this toy on screen. This is a mint sealed samurai Storm Shadow, right? And then under that it says Cobra Ninja. And there's a red sticker that says now with Kung Fu Grip. And there's a G.I. Joe logo. And nowhere on this does it say Sigma 6. So, Mark, this toy was released?
Yeah, I believe so. This is from Yo Joe, so I believe this was a regular release from towards the back end of the line.
All right, so I don't think I realized that maybe in the final half year of Sigma 6, Hasbro dropped the Sigma 6 name, and it just seems to be G.I. Joe now with Kung Fu Grip. This is definitely still part of the Sigma 6 aesthetic and scale. And sort of accessorizing, but I guess technically it's not a Sigma 6 toy.
And while we're at it, let's have a look at the Snake Eyes that's in this same scene. So this is codename Samurai Snake Eyes. It's a Snake Eyes with chunky armor. He's got a removable samurai helmet with antennae, giant shields, some massive weapons. This kind of crazy, was it nunchucks type thing, and massive shield, and some soft goods as well there by the looks of things.
These two figures, the Samurai Storm Shadow and the Samurai Snake Eyes, are, and I say this in a fun way, this is not me being grumpy, they look like these G.I. Joe figures have like crossed over with some other toy line, right? Like this looks like 2 parts G.I. Joe and 1 part Sectars, or not Playmates Ninja Turtles, not Power Rangers, not Ken or Batman, but there's so much in terms of additional weapons, and as Mark just said, sort of armor that I guess you clip on, and this Snake Eyes has big shoulder pads and a big chest plate, and he looks sort of like it's like hockey gear, like protective hockey gear, but it's in like Samurai Snake Eyes colors, and it looks kind of like Japanese samurai stuff. So I know this word sort of stops losing its meaning when you're talking about a toy and you're using this word. It's like saying that a car is really automotive, which doesn't help. But I look at this, and this is such a toyetic G.I. Joe toy, right? It's like Snake Eyes Snake Eyes action figure multiplied by Snake Eyes action figure. It's Snake Eyes GI Joe toy to the power of 2.
Mhm.
Okay, back to the comic. So Storm Shadow said, "Monster can't be controlled." Destro says, "You don't say." Page 2.
And we're back to this this big, let's call him the Hard Master. This old wizened ninja leader. Let the magical bindings be reperformed. Let the Dark Master sleep for another 100 years.
And as he's saying this, the urn is shaking, and there's a sound effect: click, clack, and
Click, clacking.
And the Hardmaster's hands are glowing. He's bowing in front of this wooden pedestal that the urn is on, and from behind the red curtain, now backstage, looking at this happen, is Destro. And then in the third panel, the Hardmaster says,
What? The gong?
And Destro crashes into the stage, knocking the gong over that's next to the urn, but he doesn't knock over the urn. But in the fourth panel, which takes up 2/3 of the page, the urn is falling off the podium, and the urn's lid, I guess, just doesn't exist anymore. And this exciting, scary demon humanoid warrior with a sword is coming out of the urn in a burst of light and smoke. Destro's reacting. The Hardmaster is putting his hands up in defense, and he says,
"No, the spell is broken."
From our context clues, from several paragraphs of introductory text before page 1, Mark, who is this?
This is checking back to introduction. The Dark Master, and again, we're promoting toys here because codename Dark Ninja Master was this crazy, awesome, toyetic, mad looking toy, which is a brand new originated character in this Kung Fu Grip line.
Okay, so he sort of looks like if Snake Eyes had white skin and had a white face or face mask, but a dark gray visor, but his white skin was covered with maroon sort of tattoos. It sort of look like Repeater or Shockwave's camo, just sort of jagged shapes. He's got a big tuft of gray hair popping out of the top of his head, which is like My Little Pony or doll hair. It's actual hair. He's got 2 Japanese masks that I guess you can fit over his face. He's got a sword it sort of looks like 3 throwing stars maybe attached to it, as if they're like little buzzsaw blades, and more accessories beyond that. And I gotta say, this is a very fun design, and I'm always ready to be argumentative about any original G.I. Joe character, because I want to believe that it could have been in the A Real American Hero line if, the 1988 line had just been 1 figure bigger, or if the 1995 line had been released. And, I think if you squint and crunch this guy down to the 3 3/4 inch scale and take away a few of his accessories, I think this guy could have been in Ninja Force, or maybe the 95 Ninja Force Commandos. It's a little hard to tell because he is the Sigma 6 size and scale. And again, there's this brand, let's say, complexity, not confusion, because it's Sigma 6, but it's also Kung Fu Grip, but it's also sort of Real American Hero. And I might be sort of protective of the greater Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow Ninja Clan backstory and mythology if it's not being written by Larry Hama in a G.I. Joe comic, preferably a Real American Hero comic. If it's something new for the live action movies. If it's for one of these toy lines that didn't last very long, I might feel like it doesn't have the same authenticity. But this is a Gonzo figure, and I like it.
Very cool. So here he is. He's coming out of the urn and expanding to a indeterminate size from this panel. No, the spell is broken.
Okay, page 3. All right, fight scene.
Yeah.
In the first panel, what's his name? Demon Master?
Dark Master, isn't it?
Dark Ninja Master? Okay. Dark Ninja Master. Okay. DNM. His word balloon has a Japanese word in it.
Free, he's saying in Japanese.
Oh.
Because each one of these word balloons is that he says is a genuine Japanese word, one word per bubble for most of the things. So he's sort of being quite curt with the language. So the first one is free. The second one is conflict.
Okay,
but back in 2007, we didn't have Google Translate on our mobile phones back then. So I'm afraid that the kids reading this comic would not quite have the same tools at their disposal to know exactly what he's saying. But I don't know that we necessarily need to know.
Right.
But,
I think you could take 10 guesses and one of them would be right.
Yeah.
His word balloons have a different treatment. They are black, and the word is very large, and it's white. So it's sort of the opposite of a traditional word balloon. So in the first panel, it sort of looks like he has jumped and is now landing on a bunch of the ninja in the courtyard, and they're all in white, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in this storyline, the Arashikage ninja wear white, although they're not Storm Shadow. He's wearing samurai armor. And then in the second panel, he gets 1, 2, 3, 4 poses. Remind us, what's that effect called?
The DeLuca effect, I believe, where
yes, thank you.
Moving through a panel.
Eagle-eared Talking Joe listeners will remember we very much pointed this out in the Kelly Thompson Scarlet miniseries, and Kelly Thompson had already used it to neat effect with her collaborators on a Black Widow series. Okay, so in this second panel, there's sort of 4 poses as Dark Ninja Master jumps and flips and crashes through more of these ninjas in white. They're getting tossed aside, dropping their swords, getting shoved. In the third panel, Ninja Snake Eyes, who again sort of looks like Darth Vader and Snake Eyes, and who's the main guy from Sectors? If like the 3 of them got mushed together, and I say that in a good way because it's a cool design, even if it's nuts. He's lunging away from Flint, who says, it can't be real. And then in sort of a mirror image, lunging away from Destro is Storm Shadow. Both of these 2 ninjas have their swords ready. And Destro says,
Storm Shadow, bring me that Dragon's Claw sword.
I just want to say, Dragon's Claw sword, because of that possessive, because of that S at the end of the second syllable, that's harder to say aloud than you think. Like, you kind of want to say Dragon Claw's sword or Dragon Claw swords, but Dragon's Claw sword, you sort of have to stop between the first and second word, which I might not think of if I was just reading this comic quietly to myself, but I'm reading it to the internet. All right, turn the page, page 4.
Bing.
This is more fighting. In the previous page, sorry, can you go back? All the backgrounds were yellow and orange. And now here on page 4 with a bunch of speed lines, all the backgrounds are light blue, sort of a pale medium blue. So Samurai Ninja Snake Eyes misses the evil demon master with his sword. I think it turns out Snake Eyes is holding 2 bladed weapons as the evil guy sort of dodges out of the way. And then what's happening in the second panel? Has he pushed? He hasn't kicked. Oh, he's
sort
thrown.
of flipping him. Yeah, like throwing him, I think. Yeah.
Okay, right. His arm is down and he's leaning forward, and Snake Eyes has been tossed away, coming at us behind him. Storm Shadow is jumping with his sword ready for a big swing. And the demon ninja master says,
he says victory
okay,
in demon.
Seems a little premature, but I'd be excited if I got to come out of an urn for the first time in 100 years.
Hold on, I do have a demon effect. Let's
Victory!
Okay, and then in the third panel, the demon has turned around and is kicking Storm Shadow in the face. Storm Shadow,
yeah, it's got sort of these weird sort of toe speed lines that make I sort of looking at it, what's going on here? It's his sort of foot sort of swinging around, and the lines are sort of representing the movement of his toes swinging. Okay,
around. So he's connecting the kick. He's connecting with Storm Shadow's head with his heel.
Yeah.
Okay. Storm Shadow is getting kicked and dropping his sword, and then in the fourth panel, Storm Shadow's on the ground starting to recover, and he says to Snake Eyes, who I guess has recovered,
"It seems neither of us can do this on our own, brother. Perhaps we should try again together."
One of my, I won't say pet peeves, something that I notice and don't always love is when G.I. Joe stories sort of immediately and conspicuously go out of their way to have Storm Shadow call Snake Eyes brother. And I know they are, but this is page 4 of a story. I know this is for kids who are buying toys, but I always want a little more, just withhold it a little bit, save that for the second story or the 30th story, save that for the last page. Sometimes it feels kind of on the nose because we had to wait so long reading the Marvel book to sort of, know of their backstory and their connection. Okay.
And it feels like they're sort of smushing together bits of continuities all in one place here. That here, Storm Shadow is on the surface a Cobra branded box, and he's on the side with Destro, but then they're sort of calling each other brother and teaming up very quickly.
All right, so page 5, 4 panels. Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow are both lunging towards the demon, each with their swords drawn, light blue speed lines behind them. Snake Eyes swings, the demon sort of dodges it. Storm Shadow also swings, seems to dodge it. The camera is backed up a little bit and we are reminded that there is an urn on the stage. It's on its side. There's a lid. And then the demon says,
"Fear, pain."
And in this third panel, has Snake Eyes connected with his sword? Because there's a burst of yellow sort of light and energy coming from the demon. Have they both connected? What's happening in this panel?
It feels like they've turned on ninja powers. That they've turned their swords into flaming swords because the stakes are higher and they're being extra ninja-y.
Okay, but there's no sound effect for that. If that's like a button, the way that you can turn on a lightsaber, or if right. Okay, so I can't quite tell what's happening here, but the demon is definitely glowing yellow, or yellow energy is emanating or bursting from him, so much so that it's a big cast shadow coming from Storm Shadow on the ground. That's how bright it is. And then in the final panel on this page, I had a hard time figuring this out, so maybe you can help me out. The urn is floating just above the stage in the air, and there's some yellow energy tendrils going into it, to being sucked into it, but it kind of also looks like Storm Shadow's starting to get sucked into it, and Snake Eyes is seeing this happen. So what am I looking at here, Mark?
So I think this sort of sword strike from whichever one it is that does it in the end, Snake Eyes, I think has weakened the demon, and that's allowed him to then get sucked into this open urn on the stage, and the demon's body is sort of distorting as it's sort of getting sucked into that urn, much like into a Ghostbuster trap. And I think the way that Storm Shadow and the demon are kind of on the same plane it's I think a little bit hard visually to separate them completely. But yeah, if you just take away all of the white bits that are just Storm Shadow, the bits that are remaining are the Dark Master, who is getting sucked into the urn. And it's more evident then when we flick to the next page that he's almost entirely in the urn at that point. It's just his hands remaining as the remnants are getting sucked into the urn, and he's trying to reach out for that mystical sword as he almost fades away.
And what does he say in this first panel on this next page?
Defeat.
Okay. Sorry. So to slightly differently describe what Mark just described on this first panel, the sky sort of blue and calm again. There's either a cloud up in the sky or the sort of wisp of energy that is dissipating. The urn is on its side, and there's this sort of elongated, wrinkly hand coming out of it, which, as Mark describes, is the end of him of Slimer getting sucked into the ghost trap before the trap closes. And then up in the air is his fancy evil sword that's made out of not adamantium and has a special jewel in it. And then a little bit in the distance, Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, standing pretty calmly, are looking up at the sword. And then in the next panel, with a bunch of speed lines, they're both jumping for it and reaching for it. And I'm reminded that they are not on the same side here, I guess. Snake Eyes is a Joe and Storm Shadow is a Cobra. So we rooting for the heroes want Snake Eyes to grab it. Maybe we rooting for drama want Storm Shadow to get it. And Flint, with his fist clenched in front of him in sort of an upside down kung fu grip icon, says, Snake Eyes, use your kung fu grip. And I'll emphasize that those last three words are bold, big, and italicized. So what Flint's really here is saying is, remember, kids, this toy has a special feature. And in the big panel...
Use your toy action feature.
Right. And in the bottom panel, Snake Eyes is just a little faster, a little closer. He grabs the sword. The sound effect is THAK, thack. Because I guess he's, sort of got like metal gloves, and the bit of sword that he hits is metal, even though the sword would have like fabric wrapped around the handle. But what do I know about samurai swords? My brother just owns two of them. And the Storm Shadow is still sort of reaching, but, it's like 2 inches, 2 moments, too late, too distant.
Well, I just wanted to say that another interpretation of Flint, it could be, use the kung fu grip, Snake Eyes. I don't know. Right, next page.
Suddenly there's like diagonal energy lines. Again, there's that yellow glow as sort of lightning bolts and smoke and energy tendrils course out of the urn. Snake Eyes lands right in front of the urn and stabs the sword into the urn. And I'm now realizing the urn cover is back on the urn.
Yeah.
So Snake Eyes is doing two things. He's stabbing the sword into the urn, which maybe injures the demon who's trapped inside, but he's sort of sealing it shut. Like when I definitely don't want my peanut butter to burst out of my jar of peanut butter, I don't just screw the lid on. I also stab it with a magical samurai sword through the lid, and then you really know it's not going to open. I guess in this analogy, my peanut butter is trying to kill me. It's poison or it's sentient.
You've got a nut allergy, maybe.
It's getting complicated. The sound effect here is schlunk, and then Flint is up on stage with Snake Eyes, who's holding the urn triumphantly over his head. A bunch of the white ninjas are cheering, and one of them says, "Snake Eyes did it," and another says, "We're saved." And now we're sort of a reverse angle, looking down past Snake Eyes and Flint on the stage to Storm Shadow and Destro and all these white ninjas, some of whom are applauding. And I just want to point out, this is a nice bit of acting from artist Joe Abraham, who's got who's got some fist pumps and some low fists up to face and some actual like hands together like clapping. Storm Shadow says,
"Well done, brother, and enjoy the respite from my wrath, Flint. Like this ritual, it too shall only happen once in your lifetime."
And then in the final panel, Flint, with his hands up in a little bit of a defensive pose, sort of like, is it the poster for Beverly Hills Cop 3? Is it the poster for Downtown? There's an Eddie Murphy movie where Eddie Murphy, it's just a photo of Eddie Murphy and he's got his hands up like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But I don't remember what the movie is. Maybe Mark will figure it out while I describe this panel. Flint is looking at Snake Eyes in his Darth Vader Sectar's armor, who's holding the urn. And don't forget, there's a giant sword sticking out of it. And Flint says, "Okay, now I believe in ghosts." And then in italicized letters on the bottom right, it says, "The end." Mark, in your internet archaeology, this was the final file you found, right? There's no like next page with like photos of toys or like a catalog.
Yeah, I think this was the end of that file. Yeah.
Okay. Now that I've finished the story, I realize that I have a question that goes back to the first page of the story. Why are the Joes here helping? This seems like something that Cobra or the Ninja can handle on their own.
It says that once a century, every member of the Arashikage clan must return to the temple and take part in the ritual resealing of the urn. So you have Snake Eyes on the Joes and Storm Shadow on Cobra that need to be there for some reason.
And so it's all the ninjas in white who are the sort of regular clan members who haven't left to join the military or a worldwide terrorist army. And Flint goes along because, stories are better with friends. And Destro goes along because he's a weapons guy and he sees an opportunity. Okay. All right. So now that we've read the whole story, I will say that writer Andrew Dabb handled this challenge well. It's how many was that? 6 pages?
So 9 pages cover plus credit page, so 7 pages of story. Yeah.
If you love reading comics and you have never made comics, there are really distinct challenges to making. There are different challenges to making a 20-page comic or 22 pages, a short story like 10 pages, or if you're thinking back to the 50s, like all of the EC horror, crime, sci-fi comics, 7 pages. And there's a real art to making a good 1-page comic. And whatever your length is, the more elements you have, the harder it is. And so Andrew Dabb had a bunch of toys he needed to showcase. He wants to give everyone something to do. He wants it to be exciting and there to be stakes. And he wants it to somehow feel G.I. Joe, right? So Snake Eyes has got to do a Snake Eyes thing, and Storm Shadow's got to do a Storm Shadow thing, and maybe Destro has to sort of be Destro, say something like, "I would like that weapon," or "Never again, Flint." And even though it's not him who says that, it's Storm Shadow. But anyway, it's really hard to fit all this stuff into 7 pages and make it sort of mean anything or make it good, right? Because this could be let's say this is not a comic but like a movie or a TV show. This could be a 7-minute scene. This could be a 22-minute episode, like a half-hour show. This could be a feature, and there could be a lot more movements and changes. There's the second attempt to open the urn, or like the demon starts messing up the whole ninja compound, and without bringing in more characters, like what else are Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, Flint, Destro doing to stop it, or how much more exciting can the fight choreography get? But There's only 7 pages. So for something that's free on the internet, this I think I wouldn't say satisfied, but I also wouldn't say unsatisfied, because you can't beat free. And I mean, certainly in 2007, I was not paying attention to the Sigma 6 toy. So if I'd read this, I just would have scratched my head and said, I don't know who these people are, except for, the ninja in black and the ninja in white. Mark, thoughts from you on story or art?
Yeah, I mean, I think given what it is, I think they did a decent job. I think it's a bit of a strange story without any of the context, that if you don't understand what's going on with the toys at the time and you're not paying a lot of attention to that opening preamble and skipping straight to the story, it would be a confusing story. But I think with the attention that we paid to it, I think we pieced the jigsaw together to make it work. And yeah, I'm thrilled that this lost part of G.I. Joe history has been kind of recovered. But the mystery continues, because there were 2 stories published as Flash comics online.
Oh,
and
man.
The second of which I was unable to rescue from the Internet Archive. So there was another story called Heavy Metal, based in this same Kung Fu Grip era of toys. And James McFadden wrote a summary of that particular comic that I'll read now. So this story, what it would have covered in the 7 pages: after Cobra Commander threatens to destroy Washington, D.C. with an earthquake machine he's already used to devastate Twilight Falls, Montana, Flint arrives at Cobra's Snake Pit HQ and demands Cobra Commander's surrender. The commander scoffs at surrendering to one man, but then Snake Eyes arrives in the Metal Mayhem mech and defeats all of Cobra's bats and a robotic Cobra. He and Flint nearly capture the commander before he escapes in a rocket plane. Snake Eyes then uses Metal Mayhem to destroy the earthquake machine and save Washington. So I think this was out almost immediately after that first issue. This was released in around about May 2007, with the ghost story out in April 2007.
Listeners, viewers, if you somehow have access to these files because you know someone who worked on it, are someone who worked on it, or can find lost files in the depths of the internet, and you would like us to spend an hour and a half reading it and describing it in great detail, let us know and send the files over. Let me describe the cover for people who are listening, not watching. So it's got that G.I. Joe logo. It's the version from the live action movies. It says G.I. Joe, Real American Hero. Snake Eyes is sort of behind several characters in this mech suit, which looks very much like help me out, Mark. What was the 3 3/4 inch?
I thought you were going to say the alien suit from Sigourney Weaver.
That too. So he's wearing in this sort of suit that makes him 10 feet tall, and it's got like robotic arms that sort of do what his robotic arms do, and he's got 2 like headlights over his shoulders, and then for good measure some diagonal yellow and black like Danger Construction painted stripes on the robot legs. And he is sort of not quite like directly punched, but sort of in a general sense, like pushed with his fists. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these later Cobra bat designs, which don't look anything like the 1986 Ron Rudat Cobra bats. They look sort of like
Ultron.
Yeah, sort of like an undetailed Ultron, or I was going to say like a stormtrooper sort of dipped in light gray paint with a Cobra symbol on its chest. But this was a Sigma 6 toy, so this is a design that's out there. In the bottom left foreground, Cobra Commander wearing a bit of a metal robot suit himself, not an exoskeleton, but just sort of armor with a red cape. It's funny because in his in his dialogue, he's threatening, but in his body language, he's sort of recoiling because a deadly ninja in a giant robot suit is rushing him. And the background is blue with sort of a light blue burst behind it. And then on the bottom left, it's got that big yellow text that says, "Collect them all." And then it has the sort of modern redo of the Kung Fu Grip icon, red text, and a new sort of photoshopped fist that's not the 1970s painting. And I know this is a small compressed JPEG, but can you zoom in? Is that signature on the left? Is that Brian Otogawa again?
It looks like it might be different.
Okay.
Yeah, seems to my eye to be a little bit of a different shape to it. It's possible that he's just curving it. Actually, more I look at it, I think it probably is the same. He's just curving it around the sort of around Cobra Commander's arm. I think you've got the O, and you've got a kind of a loop, and that sort of very, very last bit of his signature, which where are we? Probably a W. It looks similar.
Yes,
so,
I think this might be him.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go to his website and ask him. Maybe we should go to his website and ask him if he still has the art. Maybe we should go to his website and ask him if he wants to talk about this for an hour and a half on a future episode of Talking Joe. He should say no, thank you.
Yeah, it would just be if he does have anything, it would probably just be the cover, though, given that he's not wasn't the interior artist for the last one. So
right.
Cool.
So that's I don't want to. I think it can be awkward when one co-host compliments the other co-host a lot for a job well done. It's not sort of our job to do. Maybe that's the kind listeners and viewers. But I do want to say, as a G.I. Joe fan and maybe expert and researcher, I am so pleased, Mark, and very impressed that you went into the Internet Archive and found these files such that we were able to read this comic, and that they are, big enough and in good enough shape that we could sort of show them full screen for the visual version of this episode. It's always very exciting when something that had been considered lost or unavailable in G.I. Joe history surfaces. And we have both benefited many, many times from toy experts and collectors and former Hasbro people and Marvel Comics people and Devil's Due people and IDW people and animation people who have found things or, retired and then started to put things out there from their desks or their closets or garages. And it's neat that folks, Mark and I showed up for today's episode of Talking Joe to do a completely different episode that at the last minute fell through. We hope to be able to do that episode at a later date. And Mark said, well, I've got these files that I found on the internet. So and neat, Mark, neat.
And while we're talking about that, these files were shared first for Patreon members before making them more widespread, because I don't like to sit on these things and gatekeep. I do like to share the cool things that I find out there. But if you do want to see these things that I've uncovered first, the place to go is
Nothing beats the Talking Joe podcast, and right now Patreon members are getting early access to episodes and extra content. Listen now with Talking Joe, a podcast you can trust.
So if you want to be like those cool kids, head on over to patreon.com/talkingjoe. A big thanks to Richard, Sam, Bill, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane V2. This version of Shane has got these two sort of bits of hair that come down the front of his face. Infinite Entertainment, Patrick and Gary V. They're all getting early access to content as well as some exclusives. And if you're new to Talking Joe, you can find us over at the website talkingjoe.co.uk, which has links to all of the places that we can be found. Tim, what about you? What do you do when you're not talking to me about almost 20-year-old comics that have been unearthed off of the Internet Archives?
Watch video essays on television and film at my YouTube channel, which is at Atomic Abe. I own a comic book store in Somerville, Massachusetts, Hub Comics.
And Tim, do you do some internet archiving stuff of your own, sharing some exclusive behind-the-scenes bits of G.I. Joe history, for example?
I do. I keep a blog. It's realamericanbook.com. That's where I write about G.I. Joe. Just going back to the store for one moment, if your name is Paul and you came to my store a month ago and asked about buying G.I. Joe back issues, we didn't get your email address correct. So please be in touch. We can talk about getting you some G.I. Joe issues.
Yeah, realamericanbook.com is where you can find all of Tim's cool behind-the-scenes stuff from his archives and research that sort of make the cutting room floor of his amazing book. And it's amazing, Tim, quite how often I'm Googling for something to do with G.I. Joe, and A Real American Book comes up near the top of the results, which sort of talks to, I guess, your web search engine optimization, but also the amazing content of stuff that is on your website that isn't necessarily being shared anywhere else. So, so I think that is it from us for now. Until next time. But until next time, please remember,
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.